This is the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast, where we spread awareness for men's mental health and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. New episodes drop weekly.
Lord, I pray that we can reach men out there tonight and also women that need to hear about you, Lord, and also need to just see the value and the importance of mental health. And then I also want to tie in the fitness component and how important it is to take care of yourself. Lord, I pray you'll bless Bert, be with him and his family, and just protect him. Be with me during this episode, Lord. Guide me, lead me through your Holy Spirit. I'm grateful for this opportunity to sit down tonight, and it's in your mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Welcome back to the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Steve, and you may not know this, but in my day job, I actually own a personal training studio. So I am sitting down with a man tonight that is a absolute legend in the fitness community. So this is fun for me, being a trainer for almost 25 years and a business owner for 12, to sit down with a man who I've seen over the years. And I've had different experiences in the fitness industry, everything from strength conditioning, human performance, working with kids going to buds, training guys in the law enforcement academy, being a cop myself, working with, stay-at-home moms. So I am really pumped for this episode. And before I introduce my guest, I want to say a big thank you to Nick Lavery. He's the one that introduced Bert and I and made this episode happen. So Nick, much love. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.
And if you're new here, thank you, Nick. And if you're new here, smash that bell, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode. Bert Sorin, thank you very much for coming on the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast tonight, brother. It's an honor.
Steve, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor, and anytime you get recommended by someone with the stature, not only physical but moral stature of Nick Lavery, it's a good day. So I'm very honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's wild, man, to sit here and be talking to you because I've been in the industry so long and I've seen all your, your equipment and just the stuff over the years. So it's almost surreal, dude. Like, it's one thing to talk to certain guys you see online in certain communities, but I have a degree in ex-phys. I've been in this industry forever. So it's wild, man. I feel like I'm at some training seminar right now. It's crazy.
Well, I very much appreciate that. It's an honor to be, to be thought of in those words. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Well, hey man, let's start from the beginning. I ask every guest kind of, where'd you grow up, man? Where were you born?
I was born here in South Carolina. I still live in South Carolina in Lexington. I was born basically about 8 miles away in Columbia. And I grew up in Irmo and a pretty typical suburban kid, just middle-class suburban kid, ride our BMX bikes around and, got to be home when it gets dark. And, you do all the fun yet stupid things that kids in the 80s did and build forts and get in trouble and do all the dumb things. So yeah, that I had a lot of fun as a kid, but it wasn't, I wouldn't say overly extraordinary. Besides the times that, my dad as probably about 10 or 11 would start getting me more on his adventures. So I got to experience probably things that were a bit above my age pay grade. And so that became a pretty influential piece of my childhood, but that's where I'm from.
Was that outdoor type activities or was that the strength training component? Does that kind of start your career with that?
Yeah, it was the outdoors. So, taking me hunting wild boars when I was 10 years old and, and using, full size elephant rifles and things like that, not knowing anything different. But about it, it's kind of ridiculous, right? But, I think
it's the 80s, man.
Yeah, it's the 80s, right? I mean, I think my first bear I killed, I was 12 and they left me out in like 20 miles from camp by myself in Maine. They're like, all right, man, we'll come back later if you see a bear shooting. I'm like, okay, cool. And I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a 10, a 12, and a 14-year-old, and at no point would that be what I would do now. But I look and I see like a dad that instills challenges, but also also confidence. That's how you build. How do you build confidence? Well, something that's above the expectation level, and then you achieve it. You build confidence. And so I look and see how important those pieces were in my early childhood to build confidence. Of kind of putting me in situations that I was probably by most terms wasn't ready for, but gave me the opportunity to rise to the occasion. So I think when I was about 11 or 12, Pops challenged me to do and my younger stepbrother, who was 4 years younger, so I think he's like, what, seven-ish, to do a winter camping trip on an island in the lake. That was like a primitive survival camping trip, and he dropped us off on the island and a storm rolled in. He couldn't pick us up because it was white capping out there, and we had to
Wow.
ride out the storm as like two little kids. Um, and camping, but we laugh, and it was the worst night of my life. It was horrible.
I'm sure it was Hell Week. That's what it
It was
sounds
horrible.
like.
Yeah. Once you like, it was weird. I remember like midway through the night, kind of going, although this is terrible and it's cold and the flapping of the tarp is super loud and it's like, this is horrible. You kind of go, well, I'm not going to die. So it's just going to suck. And then and then when you kind of get that strength and going, okay, well, then this is just, can I just take this? Okay, well, and then it was, the mindset was, well, it'll get light soon. Well, it'll get light soon. And that, I think just even that simple, like, daylight is coming. And I think that was a physical piece of the puzzle, but I've hearkened back to that in so many tough times later in life. Like, well, the sun will rise. It's not going to always be dark. This wind isn't always going to be this bad. It's not always going to be this cold. And of course, we made it through, and it was interesting because my little stepbrother, he became rather successful, later on in life, and we've kind of laughed. We're like, well, that island was probably a pretty good idea. For me.
Yeah, no
That was,
doubt, no doubt.
and again, I couldn't imagine doing that with my kids now. Maybe I'm just softer, or maybe it's it's not the '80s anymore. But anyway, that was a lot of my childhood.
Well, so, I mean, I'm assuming that definitely played a role in your, athletic career with building resilience and, obviously discipline to be able to be out on those trips at that young age. Did that
Yeah.
really carry over into your success as an
I would
athlete?
I would think so. I would think so. And I mean, whether it's a hard set or a hard workout or a hard block of training, that mindset of like, hey, it's going to get light soon. Like
Mhm.
this isn't going to last forever. Other people have done this, and then that's why I like the outdoors side of hunting and stuff like that too, because there's plenty of times I've been caught out and cold and rainy and all this stuff, and you just kind of start realizing that in many ways I either couldn't have changed it, so it's out of my hands and I have to accept it, or I could have changed it and made it better. Thus, I need to prepare better next time. Thus, I'm taking on responsibility. But both of those are somewhat relief, for you when you realize, hey, I can do something better to make my situation better, or do you just realize I couldn't have done anything differently than this, and it's 40-mile-an-hour or 50-mile-an-hour winds and it's raining. You're like, well, it's going to suck, but I'm not going to die. So let's just kind of get over that emotional part of it. And so, yeah, I would say that definitely carried over into my athletic career, but quite possibly the business side of it too, because as you well know, as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of rainy, windy days, and figuratively there, and you just kind of go, okay, well, you know, batten down the hatches and it's going to get light soon.
What about, like, growing up, was faith a big part of your family, like going to church? Was that a tradition
No,
for you
no,
guys?
it wasn't really. I didn't grow up in church.
Okay.
It was, there were, I would say, Judeo-Christian values baked in to everything we did, but there was not a big church component. I'll be honest. Like when I was a kid, the times I went to church was on, holidays where you go to your grandmother's house and then you go to a one, her church with, ancient people in there, and yeah, because they're ancient to you when you're 5, right?
Yeah, totally, dude,
You're
totally,
5
yeah.
years old and you're 5.
Especially in the South.
Yeah, and you're just like, I don't know, man. Y'all are singing all these songs and you're saying stuff, and I don't know what's going on. And these are these seats are really hard and y'all standing up and then you're sitting down. I don't know what's going on. And so it and you're wearing a clip-on tie. And so that, that was my, unfortunately, my early experience. And, and you kind and then, I would stay at friends' houses and stuff. And they're like, "Hey, we're going to church tomorrow." I'm like, "Okay, cool." And you go and you have a great time at Bible study or, at like
Hmm.
Sunday school. But for the most part, it was not pushed. And it wasn't a great experience the times I had interfaced with church just because you're a little kid. You'd rather watch cartoons, not
Yeah,
sit on a
totally.
wooden seat with old people.
Or play outside,
Right. I would much
be
rather be playing outside or fishing or
yeah.
doing anything.
So what about as you kind of started to age and go through like the teenage years and you got super competitive as an athlete, did faith enter in your life at all at that point, or was
Uh,
it still kind of the same
Kind
thing?
of the same thing. Once I figured out what I liked, I've always run after what I cared for, with high velocity and intent, whether that was the outdoor pursuits or lifting weights or in my throwing career or whatever I've been into, I've been very, very into. So in some ways, I feel like that's like a little bit of a cheat code because, the things I might be relatively good at now, I've been doing for like 25 or 30 years.
Mhm.
So it's like people are like, "Well, you're really good at that." Like, "Yeah, I've done this since I was 10. I'm almost 50. Like, I better be good at it
Yeah.
by this time."
Right,
But it's
right.
just I thankfully, I picked the stuff that I liked pretty early in life, and I just tried to just keep doing it. So that being said, those are the things I was chasing during that time, and I would say it was, 2001, early September, actually, it was in 2000, and I'd had a fella at our gym had he was just always a really, really nice guy. He was always asking about me, seeing if he could help, asking really good questions. You could just tell he carried himself differently. And, and he had maybe once or twice invited me to a Bible study. And I remember the gym owner there, he had invited me to Bible study, and I was just like, I knew there was something more there, but I wasn't, what, no one in my immediate culture was like all about it. And then I remember him saying, he goes, "Well, maybe there's something in your life that'll come up where, God will be your only option. Um, you won't rely on your strength." And I was a strong, capable person. So it's easy to fall into the mind frame of like, I'm strong, I'm capable and smart. Like, okay, I kind of got this knocked. And then the next day my dad's house caught on fire and then he almost died in the fire. And it was interesting, the first 2 people that or the house that were trying to help were those 2 men that worked out at the gym, one that owned the gym and one that ran the Bible study, and they were the first 2 people that dropped everything they were doing, and it just kinda clicked with me. One literally the day before had said, "Maybe there's something that'll happen in your life that you'll realize that you don't have all this knocked in your power," and I was, 22, 23 years old, and then the next day that happens, and my dad, he house was on fire. He went to his house, ran in the house to do what I'm not sure. Maybe save stuff. I'm not really sure, but when they got there, the firemen saw him run into the house, and they literally said later, they're like, "Yeah, we just figured he was dead because people don't run into a house fully involved like that and leave because we knew we were going to be finding his body." And somehow he ended up making it out of the back of the house, and thankfully he was fine. But that just stuck in my head, and so, and so it was, about almost a year later, I remember laying down and in my bed and asking Jesus to come into my life and just saying, "Hey," like, it had just kinda been cooking in there, and
Yeah, yeah.
and a few days later, 9/11 happened, and
Mm.
it was like, "Huh." And there just so a lot of things in my young adult, semi-successful young adult life, it was just pointing me towards, yeah, you don't have all this figured out. And so then that became as a, I want to say a self-inflicted Christian in many ways, so there's, you stumble and you're learning and you're still making a lot of stupid mistakes and you're learning some and you're maybe pontificating a little too much, or maybe you're preaching at times and being a hypocrite, all the things you do in your mid 20s with the new faith. And, I'll be honest, that kind of fluctuated like that for the next 8 to 10 years. And I would go to some churches, I'd go to some Bible studies, I might, I might go, hunting Friday afternoon, Saturday morning, um, Saturday evening, go out go out and party and drinking all night Saturday night, and then still get up and go to church and thinking, well, I did all the right stuff,
Hmm.
and that's an easy trap to fall into. And I would say when I really, more so, r- really, really started changing my life is when I met my wife. And she was the only woman that truly challenged me through her actions and her expectations to be legitimately a better man. Um, and she was very, very connected with Christ. And so through that, um, you know, I always realized I needed to be better and more connected. But if you're kind of like on a roll and you're winning, it's really hard to change.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So
Definitely.
that's kind of my story of salvation.
Well, and I think that's really thank you for sharing that. And I think it's cool to hear that because a lot of men, myself included, were raised in the church and had this solid foundation, but then decided to go hard left because, like you kind of alluded to, going out partying Saturday night, but then you're in church, you're doing the right things. But I know for me, I kind of was looking at God like, hey, you owe me. I've towed this line, and then I got frustrated and kind of walked away. And just for the listeners and be clear, God never leaves you, even if you decide to do your own thing. But it took me kind of basically making a mess of my whole life to finally realize, okay, I really do need God. I can't. Steve's plan's not working, and so it's cool that you kind of then you met your wife, so it kind of all came together, and instead of kind of going down this road of just destruction and then figuring out kind of there's a good analogy like the house is on fire and the guy standing with the box of matches and he looks around and goes, "What happened?" Like that kind of analogy. So that it's cool to hear that you were able to meet your wife and then kind of almost in a way like have a really strong Christian influence and say, okay, this is going to make me a better man versus kind of like what I did. So,
Right. And that, I appreciate that. And I think God always had put in me a self improvement side. And
mhm,
in some ways, not only did I love my wife and still do dearly, but I knew I knew that she would challenge me and she would in fact make me a better man. And I knew that she would hold me accountable where others had not or had the backbone
mhm,
to. And that was all Christ driven. And I knew I wanted it, but it again, it's like when you know you don't have to buy the cow because you get the milk for free, it's like, well, I should buy the cow. You're like, I should, but I got the milk earlier today too, and I'll buy the cow next year.
yeah,
Kind
yeah,
of scenario. And that's and again, she's just awesome. And so again, it was a maturation process, and it was me
mhm,
realizing in many ways that I didn't have it all together. And thankfully my life didn't take those wild, Hollywood insider story, crazy stuff that, maybe would be the juicy, details that the listeners would want to listen to. But in the same respect, like, we could say, oh, I didn't screw up my life. And then you're like, yeah, but you can put some stuff on paper that doesn't really look too great in the P&L either, you know?
right,
So
right,
I don't think you have to end up in a men's shelter and on the streets and stuff like that to realize that you were certainly on the path of screwing up your life. Although from the outside, yeah, I just competed in 2 Olympic trials and I was, running a business with my dad and, we're doing relatively well. And, like all the things that I would have used as a gauge were all relatively good, but they hadn't those runways hadn't run out yet, but they certainly would have.
Mhm, mhm. Well, it's interesting you bring that up. I wanna ask you this, man. So was there a time in your life you're obviously a big, strong guy, you grew up, in the strength world, and, a lot some of us that are really into working out tend to neglect the mental component when it comes to overall wellness. Was there ever a period in your life where you felt truly vulnerable, Bert, internally, where you couldn't deal with something just from your physical strength or your outward appearance? Did you ever just have that moment where you just felt like I'm totally vulnerable internally and I need to address that?
I went through spells. I haven't really suffered from that overly, thankfully. But I'll be honest, my last few years have been very, very difficult. I lost my dad. Well, it'll be in 2 days, it'll be 2 years to the day.
I'm sorry, brother.
So I appreciate that. And so, when you have, a guy that was your biggest influence, your business partner, your hunting partner, your lifting partner, your coach, all that stuff. And, so this time of year, it's not like my most favorite time because a lot of those things kind of come up. And unfortunately, May 30th just kind of is going to suck probably for a long time. Um, and so I would say if I've struggled, you always struggle from stress and pressure and questioning, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing by myself? Am I doing the right thing for other people? But the last year or two has been very difficult from that perspective. I've had to I've attempted to be vulnerable as I possibly can, partially to honor him, but also for the realization if I'm not, then I'll just burst. And it's
Mhm.
been more of a, I hate to say, a little self-preservation, like, hey, I'm pretty good at putting things in a little box and throwing them under the bed and, carry on. I've been very good at that and pretty effective, um, but yeah, there's been some dark times in the last couple of years. I mean, in the last few months, to be honest.
Well, I read, that nature kinda helps sharpen your focus and, gives you some mental clarity. Have you used that to kinda help through the last couple years from your mental health?
Yeah, I would. Nature is always, a couple things. I wouldn't say I'm an overly addictive person, but I love oxytocin. I love hugging my wife. I love like wrestling with my kids. Like that resets me heavily. I've realized I have to train about every 2 or 3 days or things start spinning off the rails. And then I need to get out in the woods or need to get outside. I don't care for inside too much. I mean, it's nice, a
Mhm.
nice air conditioning house, but being outside after that is pretty much where I want to be. I want to be able to see far and let the sun get in my eyes and on my skin. And so when I'm able to do that, it's considerably better. So yeah, I was able to hunt mule deer in Colorado last year and then go straight into a Utah elk hunt. So I had like a 10-day period where the first 5 or 6 days I didn't use my phone for anything but a camera, which is great. And then not much more the next 5 days. And um I've seen that just about solve me. Like it almost had everything pretty much hashed out. And to the point where I was actually kind of depressed coming back to the real world. You start questioning, you're like, what would it cost just to do this? Because it was the day after Charlie. It was the day Charlie Kirk got killed, and
Wow.
I started. You go down the rabbit hole, start seeing things online, and just I was sad for he and his family, of course, but then just the things that people were saying, and just the people just being horrible. And you know
Mhm.
what? I don't wanna ride this ride anymore. I'm out. So I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
out, and that was one of the better things that I've done in a long time, and hopefully I'll get to do it again this year. Long answer, that has been a very medicinal, experience for me getting away from everything and being outside. Straining pretty hard, hugging my family and being outside. Everything else, I could take it or leave it.
Well, speaking of kinda, today's culture, and you mentioned Charlie Kirk, I wanted to ask you this because being in the fitness industry, it's changed a lot, and we're similar in age. And I there's so many trends, all the influencers and all the BS you see on Instagram. Is there have you got any backlash for being, an avid bow hunter, for being a man of faith, for kind of being an old school man's man? Like you're very I mean, you got the best beard so far on the podcast, so you're obviously masculine.
You
But
can't
I'm
see all
curious,
the
I'm
food in it
curious.
right now.
Huh,
It's good.
do what?
As you can't even see all the food in it right now. So
Yeah.
good.
You sound like my son when he says that to me all the time. But I'm just curious, man, have you faced any backlash, because the fitness industry has changed so much? Has that impacted you at all?
Thankfully, not too much. Ye- I don't know. Maybe I've been grandfathered in enough where I came up in the era where like men were men,
Yeah, yeah,
and and so yeah, you'll get some people chirp this and that. But I read something. I think Bradley Cooper said it years ago. He said, "If you have a problem with me, call me and tell me about it. And if you don't have my phone number, I don't care if you have a problem with me."
that's a good point,
And
dude. Yeah,
so I've yeah, you get some weird stuff online. Oh my gosh, whatever. And then I just kind of came to the point where I realized I've truly never done anything to hurt someone. So
yeah,
I could lay my head on the pillow resting well. I know that I've poured into a ton of people with values that I hold self-evident. And if I'm not saying can't and I'm not fallible and I could be wrong. But if I know I'm trying to love people and help them or inspire them or educate them to do certain things effectively, and it's just always their choice to how they want to do it. So if I know my intentions are okay, after that, I've just kind of gotten disenfranchised with the majority of the fitness industry because I feels like there's a lot of charlatans and there's a lot of folks that are very self-absorbed. And, at almost 50, listen, you and I both, we've seen all of that. We've ridden those rides, we've played those games, and it's so, I would say, I don't want to use disgusting, but I have 0 interest in it. I I used to do all I was, like, chairman of the Arnold Classic during the '08, '09, like, I've been to all this stuff, like, I've been
yeah,
around all this stuff, like, I rode all the rides, and what I want people to realize, like, get back to your maybe more a little more simplistic or concrete values. Yeah, you can be big or strong or jacked or attractive, like, whatever you choose to be, but don't make that your calling card.
yeah,
Make that the only thing that matters, because man, there's a lot of beautiful jacked people walking around that I don't want to spend more than 7 seconds with. And it's unfortunate because when you're young, you're like, this is awesome. This is what I want to do. You
yeah,
get around, you're like,
yeah,
gross, gross.
yeah,
Like this, oh, and so that I've just kind of, I wouldn't say written off that world, but unless they're real ones that could have real conversations and have real values, I've kind of written off that. And if we could talk about training or talk about lifting and going hard and all that stuff, like that's great, but there better be something more than that because you know, I, I'm no longer impressed if you could stand up with a lot of weight on your back. That doesn't make you a man. It doesn't make you a
yeah,
good man. It doesn't make you a good woman. It just makes all that I know. It means that you could stand up with a lot of weight on your back. That's
mhm,
all it tells me. And okay, that great. That's a neat feature. It
yeah,
better be more
yeah.
than that. So
Yeah, and it's funny how I know, like, for me, it kinda took me getting older to finally understand that. Like, my definition of what a real man was really changed. I'm 46, and it took me until about 42 to understand what a real man was.
and there's no way to know if you don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
You could have mentors try to help you, or you might be a little old for your age or like an old soul or whatever, but all of us kind of have to ride that ride to some extent. There's all
mhm,
the things where we probably spend a little too much time in the mirror, if they spend a little bit too much time thinking about what we're portraying, what people think about us. And when you realize in the end, none of that matters. None of that matters
yeah,
to people that truly matter. Um, I would argue that anyone that most people want to emulate, be like, or be um, or that they would want to attract the attention of. None of those people care about that stuff. And the ones who do, you probably shouldn't really be trying to be like them. And so you kind of, my goal now is to let people see behind the screen and the curtain and go, hey, 600 pounds is interesting and everything, but like it's a feature. That's
Yeah.
great. And if you can't do 600, you can do 500. Great. If you can't do that, you can do 400. Great. If you can't do that, it's 300. You kind of get the point. Like, it doesn't
Mm.
matter.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
are you
Yeah.
trying hard? Are you enjoying yourself? Are you educating
Right.
others and inspiring others around you? Like, that's all we could leave here.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I got to experience it firsthand. My dad was a massive collector of a lot of cool things. He did a ton of amazing things while he was here on earth. But the second he passed, that stuff was no longer his. It was someone else's treasure or problem to deal with. And all of his efforts and all of his lifts and all of his trophies and all of his everything, he couldn't take him with him. And so all that was left behind was the people who he touched, who he inspired, who he loved on. And so when we had his memorial service, I mean, there was 700 people that showed up easily. There was so many people from everywhere, and everyone had stories. And the coolest part, they weren't like he was so strong, he was so rich, or some nonsense. A- Almost everyone was like, "Your dad changed my life in 1971 when he took extra time to blah. In 1983, he took extra time and coached me to blah." And it was hundreds of people saying that. And that fortified in my mind what I'd always kind of seen and felt and tried. But what I realized, the true treasure of what you leave here is what you leave here. And how many
Mhm.
lives can you, I know it sounds cheesy, but like how many lives can you, I know he was there in spirit, and to see hundreds upon hundreds of people who all had stories of how he made their life better. And so that's what I see now as the goal is, obviously the 4 people that live at my house, my wife and my 3 kids, they're my number 1, that's what they call, like, they're I don't know if you ever heard, like, the first row, second row, third row of your funeral. Have you ever heard that kind
Hmm.
of, so
Mm-mm.
that's my first row. So they talk about the
Hmm.
first row at your funeral. You die, first row at your funeral, those are the people whose lives will be forever altered by your passing. This is the worst day of their life, and this is crushing to them, and this will be a day that they will always remember, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The row 2 is there to support row 1, and everyone in row 3 and back is probably on their phone. And
Man, that's great.
it's a hard one to swallow, and I
Mhm.
bit crass and a bit whatever, but the reality of it is,
It's true, though. It's true.
right? And then you kinda realize that out of that row 3 and back, 30% of the people are on their phone, and all of them are gonna go to Applebee's after this and get something to eat. And so when you realize, and what I had to realize was, especially owning a business and you have marketing and strategy and all this stuff, how much effort and attentiveness was I putting into the third row and back, trying to grow a brand, trying to do all this other stuff, and how much versus how much effort was I putting into my first row.
Mhm.
And that was a shift for me. But then there's also, but that doesn't say that I don't want to invest in row 2 and 3, but because that would be awesome as well. That's a massive impact that you can make around you.
Right.
But I have to remember the most important are the ones that live in my house. So that's some of the wisdom and that have come with that experience the last 2 years. But it's been expensively paid for wisdom.
That's really cool to hear about your father like that, man, and, that's something that I've kinda started to think more about as I've evolved and kinda worked on myself, like, what legacy am I gonna leave behind? Because I used to kinda look at it through the lens of, "I've gotta be successful, I've gotta have this job and do this to make a difference," but now I look at, "What impact am I gonna leave on my kids? Like, what are they gonna see?" And so I'm glad you're sharing that because I think that really shows the human side of you as an individual, but also for other men that are listening, to this episode, you can't take it with you. So you can have all the money in the world, but if your kids never got to spend time with you, they're going to resent you even after you're gone, and they're not going to remember anything good about you. So thanks for sharing that, man.
Yeah, no,
That's
I hope someone hears it because, all of us might be into whatever we're into, whether it's collecting a thing or I like cars or I like whatever.
mhm,
And the tendency is for us to work towards that. And, for a lot of people that is. And
mhm.
um eh, and the reality of it is I read one time they said every trophy will eventually be thrown away by someone. And, "Well, what if you won an Olympic gold medal?" Well, okay, sure. You're not gonna throw it away. Your kids might not. Your grandkids
Yeah.
might not. But somebody one day is gonna find it and go, "What's this?" And they're gonna chuck it. So
Mhm.
there's not a permanence there. And, and I try to look at, your true inheritance or what you could leave behind, and try to sorry to be all these like sayings, but, I believe John Welborn and I were talking and he said, they say you die twice. You die the day that you die, and then you die the last day that your name is mentioned.
Yep.
And so that is a challenge to me, and I generally like a challenge. Like, how much of a positive impact can I make on this world that maybe I get to live an extra 50 years after I pass? Maybe do
Yeah.
something really, really great, and my great grandkids are saying, "Hey, that Bert guy was pretty amazing. I love how he did X, Y, and Z." And so when you put that filter on your daily activities, that I believe keeps you focused better for what helps those around you versus like how much can I get?
Mhm.
Because I've been poor and I've been rich, and I'll be honest, I wasn't any happier either way. It really, truly. When you have a little bit of money, you have more options, but
Yeah.
it's not more joy. It's the same stuff as the same stuff is the same stuff. I like those around me to be happy. I like to be able to invest in them. I want people to feel loved. I'd like to feel loved and respected. And then you realize if I keel over during the middle of this podcast, like, hey, maybe God gave me an opportunity to somebody in the last 39 minutes and 53 seconds got to hear something that'll change their life. Great.
Mhm.
Like, okay, cool.
John Welborn, he started CrossFit football,
He
right?
did.
I have not heard that name in a long
Yeah.
time, man. I had a CrossFit gym back in the day, and we used to follow some of their WODs. That's all. He's a cool
He
guy, man. I'm
is.
glad
He and
you
I met at the CrossFit Games in 2008 at
Oh, man, that's original, right?
yeah,
Oh,
it
08?
was the second one. It was the
Okay,
people
okay.
one. And I was coming off of my Highland game. I was actually still competing. I was professional Highland Games, and I was weighing like 260, and,
Wow.
everyone else in CrossFit wasn't weighing 260.
No, they weren't back then.
Except I get on the elevator and there's this monster of a human. I'm like, "Oh, there's another one of you guys." And he's, 6'5", 312. He's a monster of a man. Yeah, I shook his hand. I was like, "Hey, Bert Sorin." He's like, "Hey, John Welborn, what's happening?" And we kind of talked a little bit, and then we got reintroduced years later, and we always laughed. We were the two biggest people at the CrossFit Games, and then we became friends years later. But yeah, I was talking
That's
to him
awesome.
2 weeks ago at Summer Strong. Yeah, but
That's awesome,
he's
man.
he's
Yeah,
he's a
that's
neat
awesome.
guy.
Very cool, very cool. Well, let's get into the fitness stuff a little bit, man. I wanted to ask you this question, and we kinda hit on it with, like, the trends in the fitness industry. Is there an old school training method that you'd like to see make a comeback? Because I feel like people get so far removed from what really works, at least from what I see on a daily basis, and they wanna do, like, all the sexy stuff that you see on Instagram, and we both grew up in the '80s. We've been I'm both like Arnold. I mean, he created all this stuff, but, you see these influencers sometimes, and I hate to keep picking on them, but it's hard not to, man. And you're just like, what is this silly shit you're doing? Like, like stick to the basics. Is there one thing you'd like to see kind of make a like I don't want to say comeback, but maybe a more common training modality that you don't see anymore?
Well, that's interesting you say that. I guess now that we've been around long enough, and I'm pretty good at pattern recognition, and so what we're seeing is relatively predictable.
Hmm.
And it's not only a chronological age thing, it's because I saw it in myself. You learn like I learned to lift from my dad, so you learn from somebody and you believe that's gospel, especially if you had some experience or some uh some success, and then you have usually like a second, and you think you got it all figured out, right? And then you find that second influence, and then you're like, oh, this is the guy that knows everything. For me,
Mhm.
that was Larry Judge. And so you kind of keep going, and then at some point you kind of get this weird feeling, like, you know what? I'm in my mid-20s. I've had some success. I want to be a guy. And then you brainstorm all these wacky different things that you could do so you could be different. And that's what I believe the influencer world is doing. They're doing the
Mm.
natural chronological aging process. They learned some basics, they had some success, they maybe made a name for themselves. They realized that they can't say, we used to call it Arby's, because you remember back in the 90s that Arby's used to have 5 roast beef sandwiches for $5.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
so we would call it that was the 5 for 5 deal. And so we used to call it the squats. We would do squat Arby's. We was 5 times 5. So we're
Mm.
like, what are you going to run today? We're like, I'm just going to run Arby's. And that was 5 times 5 squat. So, but Arby's works. Like 5 times
Yeah.
5 squat works. It works really, really well. But you can't sell that every week. You
Mhm.
know what I came up with, guys? Like, go relatively heavy 5 times 5 and then go home and eat. It doesn't sell. So
No.
we all, just as fashion, and I see strength and fitness as there's strength fashion as well. Pendulum always swings. And so there's people that, hey, blue jeans and a white shirt looked really cool in the 50s. And then it looked really cool again in the 70s. And then it looked really cool again in the 90s. And then it looks really cool again now. But it swings back and forth, right? So everyone
Yeah.
wants to do this thing. And so which I think you're always going to get the mid-20s, early 30s influencers, or ones that have been in the game for about 7 to 12 years. They've had some success. They're going to feel like they have to make a name for themselves. They're going to come up with a bunch of wacky stuff, or they're going to pull and coalesce a few pieces. They're going to name it something that is brandable and sticky, because the other part you have to take into account, your market, or the people who are watching and most susceptible to the industry, are generally pretty new in the industry. So they
Mhm.
weren't around 9 years ago or 12 years or 17 years ago when it hit the last time. They're new. So they're 3 years into it. They don't know anything. And then when somebody, and I'm just going to pick on Ben for a second. I love Ben, but like, wow, knees over toes. That solved everything. And you're like, it's good. It's Charles Poliquin's protocol from the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it. And thankfully, like, he really cites it and he's done a great job, but he took a couple things and coalesced them into something. But the funny part, but it gets very sticky because you could put it into a fashionable bite-sized piece. And,
Mhm.
and the, and if no one ever sold anything off of it, or got likes or sponsorships or anything like that, people would stop doing it. Well,
Right.
the other part is it works. So people
Mhm.
keep seeing that as their pathway to get notoriety. And then a lot of them I talk to as they're, 20, 30 years into it. And then the pendulum always swings back. Talking to Christian Thibodeau the other day, and he and I know
Hmm.
each other for 25 years.
Man, he's
He's
awesome.
fantastic.
Love that
And
dude.
yeah, and he was doing auditing of a lot of the different training protocols, but then you get a guy like that that's, hey, he's tried German volume training. He's tried this. He's tried this. He's tried this. He's tried this, and he's drank all the Kool-Aid, and he's swung the pendulum. And then after that, he gets back to, he goes, RB squats works pretty good. And if you want to do it, it'll probably work really good. Maybe you want to tweak a couple things.
That's awesome. That's
Because,
awesome.
and if you want to do 10 times 10 German volume training, or you want 1 and a
Yeah.
quarter squats, hey, those are cool. Do those for 3 weeks, because you'll stay mentally and emotionally in this. And that's what I've kind of come down to. I've been training hard for 35 years now. So I look at it and go, I'm doing some of the stuff I did today is the same stuff I did when I was 14. I'll play with
Yeah.
different pieces of the puzzle because they make it interesting. And because
Mhm.
I'm not paid anymore to be big and strong, I guess inadvertently because of my brand. But that being said, I still love it. And so if
Mhm.
doing it because there's interest and you're learning and you're loving it, you're missing the boat. So that's where I would say, as people, they try all the fashions, and then they
Mhm.
eventually come back to a set of blue jeans that fit pretty well, a nice white t-shirt, And that's where it kind of goes into it. So I would say I don't necessarily want to see one thing or another occur again.
Hmm.
I just enjoy watching the natural progression. It's like watching a kid grow up. They're going to be kind
Yeah.
of rebellious at first, and then they're going to realize their parents weren't stupid, and then they're going to be friends with their parents, and then unfortunately they're going to lose their parents. Like, that's
All
kind of
right.
the arc, right? The story arc. And I've
Right.
been around long enough I could watch the story arc of the fitness journey. And I just try to, in some ways, let people be on the arc, on that story arc, but then also like kind of tell them the scene that's coming up next. Like, hey man, don't go down this one too far. So do you remember her name, that Al Vermeil, a strength coach,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
legendary strength coach? He was a strength coach in this little basketball team in the 80s and 90s called the Chicago Bulls, but he's pretty good at it. But he and I talked years ago, and I asked him about a certain exercise, and he had the most brilliant answer. He said, "Tell me what it is, and I'll tell you what we used to call it." And I just sort of laughed because it was just kind of reminding me, you, if you've been around it long enough, you've tried everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he goes, "In my," or like I introduced Kevin Yoxel when he was at University of Auburn, probably in '07 or '08. I said, "Hey Kevin, are you guys doing any CrossFit, or have you seen CrossFit?" And those are, of course, the early days. And he
Hmm.
goes, "Oh, what's that?" And I go, "And those are early days." And I said, "Well, it's kind of like Olympic lifting and this, and I can medicine ball and this." And I kind of did it. He goes, "Oh, conditioning." I go, "Yeah."
No, it's the sport of fitness. It's not
No, I
conditioning.
mean, it was the funniest thing in the world because you're talking about a guy who was a strength coach at UCLA during the hot, like for 30 years. And then he goes, "Oh, okay, conditioning. Cool." And that was the conversation. And it was just like, "Eh, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
That's
You're just
awesome.
supposed
That's
to do it."
awesome.
So that's where I try to demystify a little bit of it for people and
Yeah.
realize, like, go explore, do all the fun stuff, try all the crazy workouts. As Louis Simmons used to say, anything will work for a while, and anything that works with a big enough dose could get you injured also. So that's where I'm still enjoying my journey, is just I try different things. I tried this for 3 weeks. I might try it for 2 sessions. Like, hey, it was cool. I got a little accommodation, like some little stuff happening. Oh, it's interesting. That made my back feel this way. This made my hamstring. And so just always trying to learn and experiment without the, I have to be a hit guy, or I have to be, and everyone dies on that sword when they're in their mid 20s. They're like, "Oh, if you
Yeah.
squat with your feet wide, you're an idiot." And you're just like, come
Yeah.
on, man.
Don't pull
Don't
sumo.
pull sumo, front squats early. If you're not wearing lifters, you're a moron. If you're not wearing
Yeah.
chucks, you're soft. It's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, we can rah-rah all we want. That's
Right.
it's entertaining, but let's be really honest. Like, if we're trying something really hard relatively often per week, and we're trying to help those around us, that's the workout you need to be doing.
Right. Totally.
There
Totally.
it is, right?
But I feel like maybe it's from what I see like in the area I'm in, but I feel like the younger generation is they're trying to skip what we were taught, the basics, squat, deadlift, press, or bench, and they're skipping all that and going to all the accessory stuff. And it's like, no, dude, you got to build that foundation when you're still young.
Yeah.
And it's like they don't want to put the work in. And even when we had a CrossFit gym, I would see it. So we'd have some high school kids come in and they wouldn't want to squat. And I'm like, man, you're like, you got brand new parts. Like, why are you not wanting to squat? Because then you got the guys that are like, oh, my shoulder hurts so we're not doing it as much. But the younger guys, you're just looking at them like, dude, when we were in high school, we were squatting all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like
And
death by volume, right? But
yeah,
volume,
totally.
it was
Totally.
almost like like an attrition training. Like, if you could get
Hmm.
through this, you will probably be strong just because you're still alive. And I'll talk to guys now and they're like, "Well, when I'm doing my lateral raise, I want the fully this position of the shoulder and this." I'm thinking, I just grew up grabbing the biggest dumbbells I could and yamming the piss out of them. And you do that and you try to beat your buddy,
Yep.
and then you put $5 on who could do this the most. And then you
Hmm.
try to kill each other squatting, and then you go to Taco Bell at the mall and eat as much as you
Crush
can,
it.
and then you
Yep.
go home and go sleep. Like,
Yep.
guess what? And the weird part was we were strong as crap doing that.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
that's where we're more educated, but I think you're right in a way. People have lost, they've gotten too, I mean, we all remember 15, 18 years ago when recovery wasn't that big of a thing, but I think they've gotten too recovery focused and
Yep.
not enough
100%,
just
man.
work focused because everyone
Yep.
has to floss, everyone has to do this, everyone has to do sauna and ice bath. I'm like, hey, great, I'm 49. I'm doing that to stay in the game. But at
Right.
23,
Just go lift.
go lift
Go work out.
and eat as much as you possibly can and try to
Mhm.
every chance you get, and you'll be ridiculous.
Yeah. Like you're 23, you don't need a rest day. Go train, you know?
It's
Um,
pretty crazy.
Bert, I wanna ask you this, man. I'm near Nashville, and, from my perspective, and I wanna bring because I always talk about discipline on this show, and I really haven't gotten into fitness a whole lot in here just because it's my day job, and so we talk more about mental health, but obviously when it comes to fitness and, your background and all your accomplishments, discipline is a huge part of that. Do you feel like, I'm 46, you're a little bit older than me, like, the society we see now with men, I feel like dudes walking around the average dude walking around nowadays doesn't care what they look like, they don't wanna go to the gym, and they don't put in the work to better themselves physically. What's your take on that, man? That may be harsh on my end, but that's just what I see.
I would say 2 of the 3 are accurate from my position.
Mhm.
I think your first one may be, it could be accurate. In my opinion, you said they don't care what they look like. I think down deep they do.
Well, that's true.
I
Yeah,
think
I
they
misspoke
do.
on that.
I think they lack the discipline, as you said, to do something about it. And
Mhm.
culturally, unfortunately, we've made it a mockery and a sport of just kinda not caring,
Yeah,
the no F's given kinda thing. And
right.
it's like, "I don't care. I'm gonna drink this and then puke and then go drink again." I'm like, "Oh, great. We've all played that game. Fine. It's funny. It's great. Like, okay, fine." And but what I've found is usually it's the people touting that the loudest are the ones most afraid because they're not happy about where they are and they're trying to convince themselves and others that it's okay. I used to say that the barking dog is the scared dog. The one that's yapping in a room, the one that's doing all that, that's the one that's putting on, that's the one that's kind of terrified at where their position is or their life.
Mhm.
And that's where I would say I see a lot of broken men playing the game and smiling through sad eyes and trying to have that big party Instagram smile on their face. They're going to take their picture in front of some stupid looking chandelier with a designer shirt on and a PJ or whatever nonsense to try to convince themselves and others that everything is okay. And in reality, very little is okay. That's what I see. I see sadness is I
Yeah,
see a
yeah.
lot of a very afraid people. Um, and I'm not trying to put myself in an elite position above them in any way, but in some ways, I think I've released myself or been released from the matrix of that. And so I'd like people to hear, like, you don't have to live like that. That doesn't have to
Mhm.
be how we do this. You can be vulnerable. You can be kind to people. You don't always have to show out. You don't always have to be the big guy in the room. You don't always, and you could quietly have discipline to make your life a longer and better and higher quality life through discipline. Jocko's, he always talks about discipline equals freedom.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
I'm trying to teach my kids that. And it's so brilliant when you realize, yes, if you do the hard work early, you then have the freedom to do kind of what you want in life. But if not, and you look only on the short term gains or the short term results, you become anything but free. You become a slave to your choices. And so that I totally I agree for the most part to what you said. And that's one of my missions is to try to teach my kids and their friends better, but then also inspire others. Like if they think I'm cool because I might be successful or have a big beard or whatever. Like, okay, did God put me in a position to be influential from that side? I think in some ways he's put me, I don't say this very often, but I've found myself in a situation to be an influencer to the influencers.
Mhm.
Weirdly, I know a lot of very influential people And I've seen some things transpire that has told me that maybe that's the position God has put me in. And
Mhm.
so, and I take that very seriously. And if I'm going to be blessed or my life will be blessed by maybe being desirable in some way from what other people see, I want to give them the best insight to how I see this whole thing playing out.
It's a good point, and I think to step back a sec, like, when I said they don't care what they look like, I'm referring more to leading by example. And, that part I don't like. The physical stuff for me was always the easy part. The mental stuff was the part I was afraid of. But if you can get started and get into a program or just go to a gym and hire a coach, go online. I mean, YouTube's got a plethora of, information, or Google. But I guess for me, like, there's certain folks in this influencer space, podcast space, fitness space, whatever you want to call it, that want to tell people like how they should live their life and what they should do, but yet they're not going to the gym. And I just see it as like, not trying to be a dick about it, but like, dude, if you're not, where's your discipline if you're not even like in shape yourself? It's like the overweight personal trainer. I'm going to go hire the overweight trainer, but they don't have discipline to eat right and train, but they're going to tell me how to do it. Like, I feel like that is just wrong, dude. Like, lead by example, you know?
Yeah, no, you're
That's just kind of how I am, man.
no,
I've always
that's
been like that.
that's how you should be. I think people need to be accountable, for their what they're pushing or they're have
Yeah.
the receipts, and someone told me, they said, your body and your body of work and your life is the receipt of all of your choices, and it's like, yeah, if you're fat and slovenly and this and that, and like, no one did that to you. That's the receipt of your choices.
Yep. That's a good way to put it.
And so I think just people need to be, I think they, I think they need to have a little more say pride, but also, I think it's a realization that they can make a change. And I was talking
Mhm.
to someone today, like when you feel like life happens to you is different than when life happens with you. And then when life happens through you, that's a whole different experience. But when it's always oh, woe is me, this is happening to me. Well, that's a very non-empowering feeling because you just feel like you're a leaf getting blown around. But when you're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, this life is happening with me," you know, God is doing certain things and I'm doing certain things. And then you get to a point where it's happening through me. Well, God's work I'm now being used as a tool for myself and others. Like that
Mhm.
becomes a pretty empowering position. But it's all a mental change.
No, that's a good point. I think the accountability and the receipts is a really good way to put that. I'm glad you shared that. Bert, I want to ask you, man, how did Sorinex get involved with the tactical community? Because, and before you answer, I gotta say this. I gotta say this. So I was in the Navy and then I went into law enforcement, and I'm in Tennessee. I'm in the South. We're not the most fit state in America. But when I was at the police academy for the state of Tennessee, fitness was not a priority. And I was into CrossFit then. We had CrossFit Middle Tennessee. It was the first CrossFit gym in the Nashville area back in the day. And I was shocked at the number of candidates in law enforcement that did not take care of themselves. So just for my own curiosity, I'd like to know how you got involved with your company in the tactical community.
Well, really, I mean, we've always been heavy military supporters, and at our old gym, my dad used to train. He used to train a lot of the cops in the area, and so he
Okay.
had a powerlifting team, and so he trained a lot of those. And for the police Olympics, they'd all come to him, and he'd invest time in them. And then a lot of military units had purchased from us for years and years and years.
Nice.
A couple of the units, there were Navy units, many friendships, and especially in the special operations communities. And I have so much positive to say about those experiences. Some of my best friends are in that world, in that world still to this day. And then that's opened up other opportunities. I was asked to be on the board for the Global War on Terror Memorial. So I don't know if people know, but like you have the Vietnam War Memorial in Washington, D.C. Mike Rodriguez, former Green Beret, he asked me to be on the board and an ambassador first, and then a part of that piece about 7 or 8 years ago. And so we got bipartisan support through Congress and got the National Mall reopened through literally an act of Congress. I have a copy of it on my wall in the office. We got the National Mall reopened, and so now they're going to build a war memorial for the global war on terror, which is the first multi-generational war of our country. And it's really, really cool for me. It brings a tear in my eye because talk about something that I can leave behind. And,
Mhm.
I didn't design it. I didn't like, but I had a little small piece of that puzzle that I played in that. And to be able to honor my whole generation of folks that have lost and sacrificed. And actually June 10th, I'll send you an email. June 10th, they're doing about a 20-minute expose, and they're showing the public the first time what this war memorial is going to look like.
Wow. Wow.
Man, they showed it to me about 6 months ago. There's like 10 of us they showed it to. I couldn't hold back tears in the meeting. It was unbelievable. So, like, now I look at it and realize that this is a work of art that will be here long after I'm here, and my kids will be able to go to Washington and say, "Hey, my dad had something to do with this." So I feel very passionate about that, and very, very blessed that I even got to be in the same room with people that are talking about this stuff, and if they found me valuable enough to the team that I could offer something. I'm so far honored with that. So it's been to answer your question, it's been a very organic development, and just, like-minded people generally find one another. So
Yeah, that's amazing. That's incredible. And I want to say thank you for what you do and what your company does for the military, because you can probably see from the flag right here.
sure.
My brother's active duty special operations. I won't get into what he does, but I really appreciate that, man, because I think sometimes people lose sight of the fact that we're still at war. I mean, there's guys that are not home, they're leaving their families, women too, and I think it's just cool to see how your company really supports what you and I grew up with, like that old school masculine. It's incredible in today's society, man. I love it. I think it's
Thank
incredible.
you.
Thank you for all that you do,
Thank
man.
you. Thank you. That means a lot. I mean, I'll be honest, I would not be able to do it another way. If I had to do it another way, I would just sell it and go do something else. But
Yeah,
it
yeah,
it wouldn't be worth doing. I can't. It's too inextricably linked to who we are. Uh,
yeah.
it's past a business anymore. And if I had to go against those values and those things that I love, then I'll just sell it and I'll go fishing. Like that's
Well, the cool thing too, without saying anything to get us both in trouble, the other guys on the block that are well known in the CrossFit community, they kind of sold out when times got tough, and so it's cool to see that you're authentic and that you're original. And I'm not going to say their name, but it's just cool to see that, man,
I
because
appreciate it. Everyone makes their choices in life, and
they do,
be
man.
whatever
But
they
it's
want, and
cool,
that's fine.
yeah. But it's cool to see the real ones though, and like to stay true to who they are,
Well,
you know.
thank you. We might be a little too real at times.
Well,
We'll see.
you brought up you brought up Pat Mack, so I want to ask you this because
Jeez.
well, I know, man. That dude, I gotta tell you, you're gonna laugh. Like, man, I was nervous about interviewing him. I thought he was gonna be like all intense, and he's like one of the
He's
nicest dudes I've
awesome.
ever met. He is. I was like, wow, this guy's
No, he's
amazing.
fantastic.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but he's a metalhead, and so am I. And with your background, dude, what kind of music are you into? Like with all the strength training and
Uh, I kinda went the whole like, early days, like, he's a lot more metal than I am. I've been to a bunch of Metallica shows back in the
okay,
day and, like,
cool.
back growing up and all that. I'm probably reverting back more to, like, the '70s and '80s, probably more '60s, late '60s, mid '70s, like, rock, like, that's just kinda where I'm at. Outlaw country, I'm like, if I'm in the garage or around the pool, it's outlaw country. If I'm in I might be like stadium rock, old GNR. I'm kinda like in that 1991 kick right now. Like, I was
Okay,
showing someone the other day, I said, like, look sometime on, like, Apple Music and the rock hits that came out in '91 and realize that I looked at it one day that 90% of the hits that came out in 91, and go back and look, I mean, we're talking Nirvana, Pearl Jam, the Anthrax, like Red Hot Chili Peppers, like boom, boom,
Mhm.
boom, 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 GNR, like all of it, almost all of it came out within 40 days of me getting my driver's license.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, do you understand what it was like to get your driver's license and work a crappy job and spend all of your money and bounce checks at the CD store because you're buying like the new Primus album? And
Wow, Primus, I remember
yeah,
them.
and you're like driving around just cranking all this amazing stuff. I was like, it was like Alice in Chains, and like, you're just like, oh my STP, like all these things that
Yeah.
came out within 30 days. And so,
Wow.
as probably as a midlife crisis-esque timestamp, you probably go back to when you were happiest. And I'm like, yeah, well, 1991 to 92, like cruising around in a crappy Ford Tempo, listening to, you know, freaking Smells Like Teen Spirit was pretty cool. It was
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
fun.
I rolled the dice when I did your promo for the episode, and I was like, "Man, I bet he's a Pantera guy because he's all lifting heavy." And I rolled the dice, and I had to go strength beyond strength. I was like, "I bet he's a
Oh,
Pantera
that's a
guy."
good one. Yeah,
But
I wasn't a huge Pantera guy.
okay,
I would be around some of the heavy gyms, of course. Those like Pantera is like water in a heavy lifting gym.
hell yeah, it is, dude.
But I also grew up, like I said, my dad was a big classic rock guy. So,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
listened to a bunch of, he was a big Bob Seger guy. So
Okay.
I cruised the Seger a bunch, and I guess it's also a part of, like, I have to use my emotional energy pretty sparingly. And so if I'm gonna listen to something hard, like I got about 30 minutes in me and I need the adrenaline dump to lift. But
Yeah.
after that, I'm trying to like deregulate and like drop down. Whereas I said, someone asked me what you listen to at home, and it was like, I don't remember, like Sturgill Simpson or something. And they're like, dude, that's
Yeah.
so slow. And I'm like, I have enough adventure in life. I'm trying to run 200 employees and fight the world. Like, believe me, I've had enough today. Like, if I could just
Yeah.
be kind of
Need
off,
to chill out.
I'm totally good with it. Like,
Yeah. No, I get that, dude. I'm the same way. I'm a metalhead, but at home, I don't listen to it because I don't need to be around the house blasting,
sure.
Cowboys from Hell when I'm trying to chill
Oh,
out. So
no, yeah, I've listened to Jimmy Buffett or something and then
yeah.
just kind of cruise. I'm like, hey, I'm pretty happy about this. Yacht
Well,
rock. Actually,
yeah.
I listened to a lot of yacht rock recently, which
Nice,
sounds
nice.
terrible, but I don't care. Like, listen to
Well, yeah,
rock
but
and
yacht rock's changed a lot, man. Because now the stuff they consider yacht rock is like newer,
yeah.
because it's 80s.
Yeah, no, it's
Like,
just like you listen to Africa. You go out on a pontoon boat and have your coverage
yeah,
and listen to Africa, and if you don't have a smile on your face, like we're probably
that's a great
yeah,
song, dude.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's just like
it's a great song.
I've been bad enough in life. I'm not trying to be mad right now.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, hey, tell us about the logo for those of the folks that are watching or listening. Tell us about the logo for Sorinex.
Yeah, so years ago, back in the 90s, my dad had a big handlebar mustache, and it kind of, and his was an homage to the old strongman of the turn of the century. And he always had like a big, cool, like Tom Selleck mustache. Strangely enough, Tom Selleck actually said one time after seeing a picture of my dad, he's like, "Oh my gosh, that guy looks more like me than I do."
Wow,
Which is
really?
kind
That's
of a weird
awesome.
one. Yeah, so you figured like Pops had a pretty good 80s when he was like Tom Selleck, but mixed with He-Man. So it's a
Yeah,
pretty good look, you know?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. That's awesome.
and
That's
so,
awesome.
yeah, no, he had a big mustache. And then, so we were goofing around one day and we like made a shirt with a mustache on. That was like before the big mustache craze. And we
Mhm.
did a shirt just like, oh, that's cool. And then we like pulled the shirt up into a mustache, just joking around. And then one day I just kind of walked by it and drew it on the whiteboard. And then I drew American flag in there. I was like, I like that a lot better. We're made in America. We're unapologetically masculine, but the mustache is masculine because, people are like, you guys are just so dude like. I'm like, yeah, we're owned by two alpha males. What do you expect? Like, it's like me and my dad. Like, come on. We
Yeah,
hunt, we
yeah.
fish, we lift weights. We like, what do you expect? You be who you are. I don't care. If you
Right.
don't like it, go open your own brand. We're
Yep.
not
Yep.
exclusive. We're not saying you have to be a big alpha dude. We're just saying that I guess kind of we are. That's all it is.
Mhm.
Like everyone's welcome. But anyway,
Yeah.
so what I noticed when I grew a handlebar mustache at one time, it was an interesting experiment because A, you have to be a guy. but also there's a lot of work that goes into it. There's a period of time where it looks terrible and is scraggly, but you have to train it. You have to teach it how to do this. You have to. And so I realized it took months and months and months to get it where I wanted it. And it was shitty the rest of the time. And then I realized one day, I was like, oh, that's training. That's exactly training. Where you want to eventually be is on the other side of hard and crappiness. And so you got to do something very intentionally for a long period of time. And it's going to suck for a really long time. And eventually it'll be what you want it to be. And so that became like just a moniker of how I saw things was whether it's business, whether it's family, whether it's training, whether it's whatever, everything I want is on the other side of hard. And so the mustache in itself was to have a pristine, perfect handlebar mustache is really hard and it's a pain in the butt. But that became its own badge of honor because you see someone that has one, you're like, you were intentional and you went through a bunch of crap to get there. And I like it. And so there was a little bit
Nice.
of subliminal side to that. And, and I'm proud to be an American and people bitched about, oh, you American flag, like, man, then go do your own brand.
Yes,
Seriously, go
no
make your
doubt.
own thing. It's totally
No
fine.
doubt.
I'm okay with it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
America.
Yeah. Like, if you don't like it, like there are other brands there. You could,
Right.
I
Right.
mean, I had a extremely famous person reach out to me one time and his opening thing was, "Hey man, I guess we're all going Sorinex these days." I was like, "It's a free country, dude. You can do what you want." I was like,
Hmm.
he
Yeah.
goes, "Well, I want to buy from you." I was like, "Okay, that's great. I love it. If I
Yeah.
can help you."
$20 to $20, right?
Yeah, and I'm gonna treat you just like I treat everyone else. And my goal is to make sure that you're more uh impressed and excited about your gear after you get it than anything you thought was possible. And if we do that, then we did a good job. And I feel very good taking your money at that point because I know
Nice.
we did a good job.
Nice. Do you have a like a favorite quote or motto that you like to share with the audience tonight?
Whew, man, there's a lot of stuff. There's a bunch. I mean, I have, one I was thinking of like some of my favorite verses. I believe it's
Hmm.
Isaiah 54:17.
Okay.
No weapon against me shall prosper, raised
Hmm.
shall prosper. And that's something that and when times have gotten tough, whether it's business, whether there's people doing slanderous, dumb things on the internet or all the things, right?
Hmm.
And I would just continue to tell myself like, well, no weapon raised against me shall prosper. And if I'm righteous and my intentions are pure, then I will survive this and I'll walk away with this. Um, and in 46 years, we keep standing. And so that's what I've, taught some of my, folks that work with me, they're, oh my gosh, this company's doing this, they're stealing this from this, or they're saying this. And it's just, hey guys, no weapon against you shall prosper. And anyone who slanders, they'll be condemned at some point. Not our job. And so that's something I try to keep in mind. It's the vengeance is not mine to have.
Right.
You know,
Right. Great verse, and that you actually answered my next question. I was gonna ask if you had a favorite verse, so you jumped in on me. That's good, man. I'm gonna share one too, and this one really kinda ties in with, our episode, and God has a funny way of doing this a lot on these episodes. I usually will pick a verse before, I come on the air, and, you shared a lot tonight, especially with faith and then meeting your wife, and I think this verse kinda ties it in, and it's from the book of Proverbs, which I personally think is a great book for anyone to read just because it's kinda like the guide to
that's
life,
the
but
sauna book. That's what I sit in my sauna and I listen to.
nice, yeah,
Right,
nice. There you go.
businessman's book.
Yeah, definitely, man. It's Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10. Wisdom begins with fear and respect for the Lord. Knowledge of the Holy One leads to understanding. And I think that really kind of ties into, especially us as men, like realizing that we can't do everything on our own. So to put our faith and our trust in God and try to follow his plan and his path, but still know we have to do the work. But he's always going to be there and that he wants us to ask for his guidance and to I've kind of learned that as I've grown that I can have a conversation with him in the gym when I'm lifting or if I'm driving to work or whatever where I don't have to just be in a church or away from everyone praying, I can just do it throughout the day
Sure.
and try to put him in everything. So,
It's a relationship,
yeah, man.
right? You
Yeah,
when you
totally,
talk to your
totally.
wife, you could text her anytime or call her or
Mhm.
your friends, and that's the thing I believe is how big is your God? Is God big enough to you that you know that you could talk to him at any time? Like, and what I mean by that, like, if am I so obtuse to think that I have it all figured out that this in this one building at this location that this is the only place that the creator of the universe could hear me?
Right.
Like, that's a bit of a leap.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, for the listeners tonight, if there's someone on the edge, Bert, it's they're kind of on the edge and they're wanting to give up. They just feel like things aren't going their way and they don't have a purpose. Is there anything you'd like to share or say to that person watching or listening tonight?
Interesting that you say that. You know, in some ways, I've helped a lot of veterans that have been suicidal, and just say it, they've been suicidal, and some of them I've talked to, and some of them I've asked. I said, "Are you looking to off yourself?" And they said, "Maybe." And I said, and I would ask them, and actually one of them is one of the gentlemen I mentioned already today. And I said, "Just promise me you won't do it today." And they said, "Okay, I'll promise you that." I said, "Then I'll call you tomorrow." And we made that promise as friends. And he goes, "I won't do it today." And then called him tomorrow. We talked, and then I would make him promise I won't do it today. And it kind of goes back to there's always someone that's going to be there for you. But you have to reach out also. That person
Mhm,
was calling me at the time, and he was in some ways, I believe, wanting me to kind of say some of that, but also, especially with the special operations community that I have found, I've challenged many of them. I said, "You went through SEER school, right? Yeah. You went through so and so selections, right?" I said, "You're a warrior, right? Yeah. What is the goal?" "Well, the goal is to get the job done and inflict as much damage and survive the mission." "Okay, so you're a survival expert." "Yeah." Said, "Then I need you to be a survival expert right now. I need you to survive this. Let's turn this into a mission and see how are we gonna get through this mission, because this mission looks differently than other missions you've had, but the goal is still the same. This is a survival mission, and I need you to survive this." And as my friend and as my person, and I've been very raw with people, I said, "Don't F me over. If you truly love me, don't F me over. Don't make me have to get that call, please. I'm asking you as my friend, don't screw me with that." And they go, "Okay, I won't today." And then
powerful.
and
That's
then that's where the relationship gets built, right? And then you're there.
mhm,
And then what I would say to everyone is kind of my original story. It will get light again soon. The sun will come up. It will come. It might be really, really hard right now, but it will get better. It always does. And allow yourself that time for that to happen, and don't get so focused on the red lights that you stop counting the green lights too. And so and if you need to, go to sleep. Just like literally get a brain hot wash, just clock
mhm,
out for a minute. Don't do
yeah,
anything rash that's going to negatively change that first row of your life, those first row of people. And so when you start realizing you're living for those people, um, that gives more purpose. And then all of us men, we want to survive, and we want to think we're like we're cool and strong and all the stuff. Like, okay, now's the time to show it. It just is gonna the challenge is gonna show up in a different method than we all kind of wanted it to. It's not gonna be like the home invader and we happen to have our AR and all the cool stuff. Like maybe that challenge is like, well, right now, do I want to pull myself up and go to work right now and pour into someone versus stay at home and drink?
yeah,
Maybe that's
yeah.
the mission. And if you're built for that mission, then start acting like a man and let's get up and start kicking some ass.
That's awesome, man. That's a really good way to put that. That needs to be on a t-shirt. It does, man. I've not had anybody put it that way, and that is a really good way to put that,
Appreciate that. It's
especially for veterans. That's a really good mindset to have when it comes to suicidal thoughts or just wanting to give up. I mean, yeah,
you have
that's
to
a really
realize
good
you're
way to put
so
it.
powerful, right? Like, and all of us,
Mhm.
we're so powerful as men. If you and you hold those men, they hold the key to their happiness or their destruction. And realize that, especially the veterans, I mean, they could destroy very well, and they could bring life and save life too. And they have to kind of realize with that comes a lot of responsibility. And how are they going to choose to wield that sword? And all I ask them is, as a favor, if they truly love those around them, don't be the one that destroys.
Yeah.
Be the one that I could later be excited to when the Global War on Terror Memorial opens, and the chairman of that thing that made that push through, that he and I had those conversations a few years ago, and realized the impact that that had globally to generations, that he decided to stay in the fight. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's where I just look and go, it's worth it. It's, if the phone rings, it's worth answering. It's worth calling back. It's worth checking in, is seeing what you could do. And then sometimes putting it on them and saying, hey, do you love me? Are we friends? Would you do I mean, I'd do anything for you. I said, well, then this is what I need you to do for me. This is your mission. If not, then freaking say it, that you wouldn't do
Yeah.
that for me. Because if you're
Yeah.
going to go off yourself, you're not doing what I'm asking you to do for me. And I know I'm sounding selfish right now, but I've found, especially with veterans, they are more service oriented. And if you give them a mission and hold them accountable for that mission, they would rather, it's like they would rather die than die.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. You're 100% right.
And then later, when you could, months later, when you could give a big hug and sit around the fire and have a beer, and then when you get that, hey man, thanks for calling that time, I really needed it. That's what makes everything worth it. And that
Yeah.
they still, when you call them, the phone still answers. That's the best.
Yeah. That's, I'm glad you shared that. Thank you for putting in that way. That's really, that's powerful,
Hey
man.
man,
Thank you.
the sun will rise again. It's coming.
Where can people learn more about your company? You want to plug your company real quick?
Sure. Yeah. Sorinex, Sorinex.com. We build weightlifting equipment. We're real good at steel rectangles. Um, Instagram, Sorinex. I'm Bert Sorin. They're on Instagram. If you're into training, we have Squattober, Deadcember, a bunch of free programming for people. Again, that's just an outreach of helping people do something that's really hard that they stick to, and they feel camaraderie. And if it can help people, great.
Awesome. Bert, I would be honored if you'd pray us out tonight.
Perfect. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for this voice that you've given us. Thank you for the blessings and the opportunity you've given Steve. Um, Thank you for what you're turning my life into, Lord. My young self would have never seen these opportunities. Please bless these words, not only as they came out of our mouth, but how they land on men and women's hearts and their ears. And just let them know that you're there, Lord, and that everything's going to be okay. And you want them to survive, and you want them to thrive, and they're your children, Lord. And so we hope they enjoyed this episode. And if I could do anything to help them, please give me the power to do so. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Amen. Thanks for tuning in to the Peace, Power, and Purpose podcast. Be sure to subscribe here on YouTube. We're also on Spotify. We're on Amazon Music and Apple Podcast. New episodes drop every Wednesday and every Thursday. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss one. Bert, this was a lot of fun, man. I really appreciate you taking time out tonight. This was especially just two fitness guys being able to talk, man, and then talk about the word of Christ and mental health. This is a lot of fun for me, dude, just being similar in age and coming up in the fitness industry. And yeah, it was fun. I really appreciate it, man.
Likewise. Thank you for having me. It was an honor.
It was an honor, man. God bless you, and thank you so much for your
Thank
time
you.
tonight.
Take care.
Take care, man.